Good morning and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday. Today is Women in Wellness Wednesday, and we have a few articles to share with you this morning. We're going to start first with a really, it's a update on the family in Shreveport and what the community is doing to support the family members.
State, the community is coming together to show support for the family. Again, 8 children died and 2 mothers were critically injured in the shooting.
That's right. And to help one of the mothers, a Shreveport resident has set up a GoFundMe. She says her heart breaks for the victims and she wanted to take action.
In that moment, I had no words. You can't do it. You just cry.
That was Carla Collins' initial reaction when she heard about the mass shooting that killed 8 children. She started praying for the family, but felt compelled to do more.
Is this really, really happening? Is this really going on?
So she set up a GoFundMe page for Christina Snow, whose 3 children died in the shooting. Christina was also shot and in the hospital with serious injuries. She says Christina was the girlfriend of the suspect, 𝗪𝗂𝗪𝗓𝗔𝗪. Carla says she can already feel the long and painful road ahead.
With that comes depression. And I can't imagine not hearing the laughter of her babies. That's not hearing mommy. That's not going to say, hey, time for bedtime.
So she wanted to somehow show that the community is grieving with her and help alleviate the financial burden.
She is going to need long-term, care. She's going to have to move. She's going to have furniture.
So again, if you want to help with the GoFundMe page, it is up on our website. Just head to WDSU.com and click on this story.
Yes, so there is a GoFundMe page for one of the survivors of that tragedy. And now I want to get on to just following up on a updated highlight on X. And so it says the federal grand jury indicts the Southern Poverty Law Center on fraud and money laundering charges. Fraud seems to be a very large theme this past year and a half. So on April 21st, the federal grand jury in Montgomery, Alabama charged the Southern Poverty Law Center with 11 felony counts of wire fraud, false statements to banks, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. Prosecutors allege that SPLC funneled over $3 million in donor funds from 2014 to 2023 to leaders and members of white supremacist groups like the Ku Klux Klan. Interesting. National Socialist Movement and others involved in the 2017 Unite the Right rally using fake entities to hide the payments. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche and FBI Director Kash Patel call it a fraud operation manufacturing racism for profit, while the SPLC CEO Brian Fair described the payments as standard informant work, and vowed a strong defense. The case, which could lead to forfeiture of gains, stems from a reopened probe with no individual charges filed yet. So this has already been on the table. I'm like, wow. Wow. Yeah, Southern Poverty Law Center is very interesting because apparently they try to deal with racial issues going on, but sometimes they had been found to manufacture these actual events, allegedly. So we'll see how that pans out. Now, I wanted to give you guys an update on the representative from Florida who recently decided to resign minutes before her hearing before Congress.
U.S. Representative Sheila Sherfulis McCormick resigned on Tuesday, just minutes before the House Ethics Committee was set to determine her punishment for ethics violations. The hearing lasted less than 5 minutes. In November, the Department of Justice charged 𝗪𝗪𝗪 McCormick with allegedly stealing $5 million in federal disaster funds and using the money to support her congressional campaign. She has denied wrongdoing. In a social media post announcing her resignation, 𝗪𝗪𝗪 McCormick slammed the Chamber's ethics review as a witch hunt, calling it an unfair process that gave her insufficient time to defend herself. Her departure immediately expands Republicans' narrow majority to 217 to 213, with an independent who caucuses with Republicans, and 4 vacancies. 𝗪𝗪𝗪 McCormick, whose federal trial is set to begin in February, faces up to 53 years in prison if convicted.
Yeah, interesting. She says she had insufficient evidence or insufficient time. Yeah, because you spent most of the time trying to defend something that was completely indefensible. We all know you did it. The paper trail showed it, and it was a public paper trail. But you decided to play the race card, play the victim card. You played all the cards and nothing worked out. And then at the last minute, you decide, okay, I'm just going to resign because you guys didn't give me enough time. Stop that. But that's what she did. I don't think it's going to absolve her from federal charges. She can still go to prison, federal prison, because it's 2 separate things going on. So, yeah, there's that. Now let's get to Virginia, where the redistricting measure has actually passed.
Those who were adamantly against this redistricting, calling it unfair and even unconstitutional. We know the Supreme Court will be weighing that very statement. Was this a constitutional move? Here at Little Havana Cigar Club, this party was on the smaller side, but all eyes were glued to the screen as the numbers came in. The group especially interested to see which way Northern Virginia, and even more specifically, Fairfax County voters landed. While disappointed with the outcome, they were happy with how close it was, especially considering how much more the vote yes crowd spent.
It was very close. We're talking about just a few thousand vote difference. They outspent us. It's disappointing, but not a surprise. I still believe Virginia is a purple state, though.
In a statement, Virginia GOP Chair Jeff Ryer shared he was disappointed by the results, writing, quote, "Evidently a sufficient number of Virginians trusted the blatantly dishonest language the Democrats placed on the ballot to make our Commonwealth the most severely gerrymandered state in the nation. Despite this result, I am very proud of the effort those committed to retaining Virginia's existing congressional districts have put in over the course of the campaign," end quote. Those we spoke with at the watch party say this isn't a cut and dry Republican versus Democrat issue.
I think that most Republicans were in the no category and most Democrats were in the yes category, and then the fight was over those independent voters who sort of don't identify themselves with either party. I think there was unity on each side of that, and I think that what we saw from the yes voters was confusing language that was misleading, and that may have played an impact on those independent voters in the middle understanding what they were voting for. Of course, people want fair elections. I think Republicans and Democrats want fair elections. And so when you see this language, it may have been misleading on some sides. But again, as I said, I think this is going to go to the courts now, and people are still going to get their fair representation via the courts.
And those we spoke with here say they will be watching closely to see how the courts move forward. In Fairfax County, I'm Katie Lasso, WUSA 9.
And I think it's sad that the voters have to rely on the courts for something like this. But the way it's been done, they don't have a choice but to put this before the courts, because, at a point you have to see, is it constitutional, is it unconstitutional? And here's the thing. What if people decide they're just going to vote Republican anyway? Are you just going to stick a Democrat in there anyway? Right? I mean, people vote based on their interests now, and things are changing politically. As much as we see things on the downside, I know a lot of people are afraid of the midterms. Are just like, oh my gosh, it's going to be all Democrats and Republicans. Why can't we just get people in office just to do their job, regardless of the letter next to their name? That's all we really want. Now, next, we're going to get into an update from the Daily Signal. I'm not going to play the whole video for the sake of time, but I did want to play some of it just to give a little bit of update and perspective of what's happening in Iran.
Hello, this is Victor Davis Hansen for the Daily Signal. We are now entering the 50th or 52nd day, somewhere in that period of the ongoing war with Iran. We're in the middle of negotiations. We have a blockade on Iranian shipping going in and out, Iranian-bound shipping going in or out of Iran, as well as the Iranians are claiming that they too are trying to stop shipping that is pro-Western or related to the United States. We don't really know who we are dealing with. We don't know whether it's the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps or the Army or the elected, what's left of the elected government, or the theocrats themselves. They're all vying for power. They're all arguing with each other. So it's a very complicated situation in Iran, even though they're prostrate. They don't have any military or economic capability left, and yet they remain defiant. Now, why do they remain defiant when they are the next cycle of this war could knock out their bridges, their electrical power, and destroy what's left of their military? And we could do it very easily. They believe that Donald Trump is on a tightrope, that he has certain constraints, prohibitions that are self-imposed upon him through political calculus, or there are outside criteria that will force him to stop his neutering of Iran and will allow them at some point to rearm. What are those? Well, first of all, they are watching the midterm elections very carefully, and they're looking at the polls, and they feel that the Democratic Party is a great ally, the leftist especially in it, the hard left. They look at Tim Walz, the former failed presidential nominee of the Democratic Party. He was in Spain this week at an international socialist conference. Spain, remember, is very anti-American, has refused American use of its NATO base and airspace. And what did he say? He said that our war effort, now he's talking about our soldiers at war against Iran during periods of intense combat. He is saying that they are fascists, that the whole idea was fascist. And when Iran hears that, they think, well, if a former vice president nominee of the United States is siding with us, then maybe Trump will relent. There's also edgy Republicans. They want to, of course, they have to be reelected to carry out the MAGA agenda. Some of them are looking at their internal polls and saying the price of gas is hurting us. We're not paying attention to the economy. We have under 7 months before the midterms. At some point, Mr. President, you got to pivot. Then there's the Democrats. They've threatened the War Powers Act. We're at day 50, and they're at day 60 to 90, they can cut off funds. Now, they don't have the votes in the House to do that, or the Senate, but they feel there's enough renegade Republicans worried about their own seats that they might get some defections, something to worry about. By the way, Barack Obama didn't worry about it at all. He bombed Libya for 7 months without even consulting Congress. He had a Democratic Congress, and he thought that whatever he did would be rubber stamped, and he was absolutely correct. The Europeans, they're kind of like a carrion force. They look at this. They didn't do anything to help. They did a lot of things to hamper our efforts on Iran, but they feel that the heavy lifting is over, and they might just sort of creep back with an armada, 1 or 2 ships per country, 20 or 30 countries, and then they can say they open the strait, get back in the good graces of the United States, and patrol this crucial conduit that they export into and import oil out of. So they're trying to tell Trump, stop the kinetic action, let us in, please, please. At home, he's got, in addition to the Republicans who are worried about and with good reason, and their careers, he's got the fanatic left. He's also got a kind of a fanatic right. This week, Tucker had a guest on, and they were quoting the book of Daniel from the Bible about the Antichrist, and the argument, thinly veiled, was that Donald Trump and the Iranian war fit the prophecies and the narrative of Daniel, who was talking about a king, i.e. the Antichrist, who would have success in the Middle East, but then, of course, fail and meet his fate. It was almost a wish as much as a prophecy. Marjorie Taylor Greene, once a fanatic Trump supporter, without power now, she's out of Congress, but she's now peddling the conspiracy theory that Trump really really wasn't the target of a real assassin in Butler, Pennsylvania, that he may have had help staging the incident. That's really loony. Of course, Candace Owens is now regretting her, not just regretting her vote for Trump, but arguing that he's a very pernicious, almost a satanic figure. This is really unusual, that somebody who was fanatically pro-Trump, as these three were, and were habitués at Mar-a-Lago, all of a sudden would not just say, well, I agree with him with 80% of his agenda, but the 20% I can't go along with. But they've turned not just against him, but many of their positions and much of their rhetoric is not that much different than the hard left today. We don't know where they're going to end up, but they're on a trajectory to join the never-Trumpers at the Bulwark, perhaps. And then there's also worry about the weapons shortage. We had not invested heavily enough in quantity. We have good quality of weapons, the best in the world, but we don't have enough Tomahawk missiles. We don't have enough Patriot missiles. And we need to have our stocks replenished and have them replenished quickly. And if this war were to go on another 3 or 4 weeks, we would not be able to achieve the level of competency that we had in the first 4 weeks, simply because we would be hoarding and worrying about weapons that would be short. Put this all together and explains a couple of things that are otherwise inexplicable. Why, after Iran has been militarily destroyed, it has a restive population that at almost any minute that it feels they can survive, they will rebel. And economically, it was already in a period of depression, and now it's losing all of its revenue and it's just about ready to implode. Why, with all this, does Iran keep saying that it's winning? And why do people put pressure on Donald Trump as if he's losing? And the answer is the war is not necessarily about just military affairs alone. It's politics. And Trump's enemies at home and abroad feel that if they can drag it out, and if Donald Trump, for a variety of reasons, can't turn the tactical victory to long-term strategic success, he will be vulnerable. And all of his economic progress that he's made so far, which is pretty impressive, the idea that he ended illegal immigration, the ability to flip Venezuela from an arch enemy into a successful state without any losses, all of that will be endangered, and he will be neutered in the midterm elections. And so therefore, Donald Trump is winning on the battlefield, but he has to keep going somehow and nullify all of these centrifugal forces around him that are hoping for his defeat. And yet, in the end, only he can win the war. If he continues a little bit longer, a week or two, Iran will be bankrupt. And when it's bankrupt, it will not have enough food, not have enough fuel, not have enough key consumer commodities, and the people will be very restive. But the question now that we're looking at, will the pressures that surround him in a 360-degree fashion force Trump to relent when he's inside of a spectacular and historic victory?
Right, right. That's the key question. Now let's get to the Promethean update.
J.D. Vance, Jared Kushner, and Steve Witkoff will be in Islamabad, Pakistan, to renew peace negotiations with Iran ahead of Tuesday's deadline for ending the ceasefire. It's unclear whether the Iranians will show up, as they tried to run the U.S. Navy's blockade yesterday and lost their ship, and have again closed the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump wrote about it yesterday on Truth Social. He said his approach now is no more Mr. Nice Guy if peace fails. He says the IRGC, the militia for the mullahs, is the problem because they have to look tough, regardless of the consequences for the country. Whatever happens, Iran can't hold out because they're losing $500 million a day by blocking the strait. The regime is collapsing. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into how the City of London and their intelligence propaganda assets, including Iranian ones, are trying to keep this war going in hopes of destroying Donald Trump ahead of the midterms.
Right. So the Promethean update, it pretty much says something very similar to what the Daily Signal played. That's why I'm not playing the entire video, but I will have the link to it so you guys can watch it. But what I wanted to get to is sharing with you just a very quick breakdown, right? And I said, can you confirm the meeting with J.D. Vance and Iran happened? Because you're going to see a lot of conflicting information out there. Is yes, a high-level meeting between them happened, and it happened around April 11th to 12th. Now, we know about that one earlier this month in April, but I was talking about more recently, right? So a second round of talks in Pakistan was discussed at one point, appeared imminent, with Vance reportedly preparing to travel again, but as of the 21st or 22nd, right? That follow-up trip was put on hold due to Iran not responding to U.S. positions, ongoing internal U.S. deliberations, and a ceasefire extension by President Donald Trump. So I wanted to see more about that. Now, you guys know I watch Alex Jones, and he was saying, that Trump has been told that he's been unhinged, that they've had to pull him out of meetings, that he may have dementia. Also, there's other reports that he has allegedly been taking booster shots of the COVID vaccine, which is really sad. So, I'm praying for anybody who is still injecting themselves with this particular inoculation, allegedly, we'll say allegedly, because they've already said it does not help to boost your immune system, it actually lowers it. So if that is, in fact, allegedly happening, I'm praying for everybody. I was praying, even for Biden when they said Biden was getting those inoculations. I understand that we need to keep the president healthy, but we need to keep him healthy in a healthy way. Because if doctors are literally out there saying this doesn't work, then why is he being given this? And could that be affecting his mental state? We don't know. Right. So it does say, yes, there is extensive public reporting on U.S.-Iran nuclear negotiations. And that's the other piece of this. U.S. and Israel military strikes targeting Iran's nuclear program, high-level meetings involving Israel and President Trump's escalatory rhetoric, frequently described by critics as unhinged. However, claims of Trump personally pushing for nuclear weapons use remain unverified rumors denied by the White House, with no confirmed evidence of such order or intent beyond conventional strikes and strong conventional threats. That was the other piece. They're like, he's unhinged. He's calling for nuclear attacks against Iran. I'm like, wow, okay, this is very scary. So we know the negotiations began on the 12th of April of this month. And Trump publicly stating in May, and that was last year, that sides were close to finalizing agreement with strong inspections. So we're really hoping. So it's just talking about things that happened last year, U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iranian nuclear strikes. We know about that. Now, I wanted to get down here to the rhetoric and unhinged label. Trump has issued repeated public threats during negotiation ceasefire talks, including a 5-day pause on strikes against Iran, demands to open the Strait of Hormuz or face conventional strikes. I'm not going to reread this, as you can see. Critics like the Guardian, NYT, and the Daily Beast have called this unhinged, apocalyptic, or implying war crimes due to threats against civilian infrastructure. Some interpret the language as nuclear ambiguity. Sorry, that word always gets me. Though the White House explicitly denies any nuclear weapon plans. Unverified nuclear-specific claims. A former CIA analyst, Larry Johnson, alleged in an April 2026 podcast that Trump pushed to invoke nuclear codes in an emergency meeting, but Joint Chiefs Chair General Dan Kane refused and walked out. This has circulated widely, but lacks official confirmation. Fact checkers and the White House state there is no evidence Trump ordered or planned a nuclear strike. So you're going to hear just a lot of things circulating. And in my opinion, we just need to stay prayerful regardless of what's happening, right? Because at the end of the day, truthfully, we need to make sure that nuclear does not happen, right? Nuclear doesn't end well for anybody, ever. But just go back to the Daily Signal really quickly, just how the implications were talked about. This could get really scary really quick. I have two other items I want to get to really quickly, but we already went over one. But with the tariff situation, there are a lot of people saying the businesses, hopefully it'll trickle down back to the consumers on the Customs and Border Protection website. That's where the companies can go and apply. Hopefully, fingers crossed, maybe these companies will give that money back to the consumers, through discounted items. I don't think they will because, again, fuel prices are spiking. So I don't think it's going to happen. That's just my opinion. I've got another couple things to go over, but we will get to those tomorrow. But thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News on this Women and Wellness Wednesday. So remember, stay well, stay focused, and stay unfiltered. We'll see you in the next one.